Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Hugo, who's been supporting this channel as a general tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Hugo, so again, Hugo, thank you so much. And for the personalized deck tech, Hugo chose Trelasarra Moondancer with a focus on life gain. Trelasarra is a 2/2 elf cleric that costs green, white, and says, whenever you gain life, put a ++1 counter on Trelasarra Moondancer and scry 1. And again, scrying of course means look at the top card of your library, and you can put that card in the bottom of your library if you want to. So the name of the game is of course Life Gain, but it's Life Gain with a lot of different sources. Because Trelasarra doesn't care if we gain 1 or 10 life with an effect, all she cares about is each instance of life gain. So gaining 10 life is less valuable than us gaining 1 life 10 times. And yeah, there are plenty of fantastic ways to gain life throughout the game repeatedly to, grow Trelasarra to a massive amount and also dig through our deck to get to the exact cards that we need. And while scrying isn't card advantage, it is fantastic card selection, and my goodness, can you scry really well with this commander. Now, really quick before we jump into the cards, every single card in this deck is less than $1, so this deck is very budget friendly. And of course, in the description below, you will find a link to the deck list, and yeah, now with all that said, let's jump into it. First up, even some of our ramp in this deck can be crucial with life gain with things like Pristine Talisman and Paradise Bloom. Pristine Talisman is an artifact for 3 that has tap, add colors, you gain 1 life. So although this is not the most efficient mana rock out there, again a mana rock that costs 3 and only taps for 1, but in this deck, this thing can give us a ton of value throughout the game. Essentially, again, when our commander's in play, every single time we tap this, we grow our commander with a counter, and we scry 1 for some fantastic card selection. And then Paradise Bloom might be even less efficient, but it can be even more effective in this deck and have a bigger impact. It's an artifact that costs 4, and it has, when it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever a player casts a spell of the chosen color, you may gain 1 life, and you can tap to add 1 mana of the chosen color. So obviously, most of the time, we're going to be choosing either white or green to help get some additional value out of every single one of those spells, but yeah, keep in mind that this does count our opponent's spells as well, so if you're playing against maybe a couple of blue players that are going to be casting a ton of blue spells, you might want to consider that. Moving on though, we've got Accomplished Alchemist, which can be absolutely incredible in this deck, a 2/5 elf druid that has tap add 1 mana of any color, or tap add X mana of any one color, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. With all the different ways that we have to gain life with this deck, we can gain a ton of life in a single turn, and this can tap for an absurd amount of mana. Next up, Ezroot Channeler can help us out in a different way, a 4/6 Treefolk Druid with Reach that has creature spells you cast cost X less to cast for X the amount of life you gain this turn, and we can tap it to gain 2 life. So not only can this just gain us life on its own and help with its own cost reduction, on top of also getting our commander's trigger, but yeah, this can really take advantage of all the life that we're going to be gaining and make our creatures probably just cost, a mana or 2 to cast. And of course, really quick, we've got some non-life gain ramp in this deck with cards like Sakura Tribe Elder, Fawn of Fertility, Edge of Autumn, Wild Growth, Cultivate, Search for Tomorrow, and Rampant Growth. And yeah, green has plenty of fantastic ways to ramp. And of course, with those ramp spells that involve lands, well, Jodi, Offshoot, Kazandu, Nectar Pot, and Grazing Gladeheart are going to love that. Jodi Offshoot is a 0/3 with Defender, but that doesn't matter. What does matter is whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. That is an absurd amount of value when paired with our commander just for playing a land or getting an extra land into play. Or, in Evolving Wilds, cracking it, getting a land to play from that. So of course, Kazandu Nectar Pot can also be incredibly impactful, doing the exact same thing. Whenever land enters battlefield under control, you gain 1 life, and then Grazing Glade Heart takes us a step further. Whenever land enters battlefield under your control, you may gain 2 life. Now, yes, 2 life is better than 1 life, but again, this is only 1 instance of life gain, so they're going to give us the exact same benefit with our commander. But still, yeah, the more effects that we have of these, the better. So with that said, we also have Retreat to Kazandu, Druid Class, and Shattered Angel. Retreat to Kazandu says, landfall, whenever land enters battlefield under your control, choose 1, put a +1 counter on target creature, or you gain 2 life. Yeah, if our commander's in play, pretty much every single time we're going to be taking that second option, because we're already going to get a counter on our commander, and we're also going to scry 1 on top of that 2 life that we gain. And then Druid Class says, whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and on top of that, by paying 2 and a green, we can get this to level 2 and can play an additional land on each of our turns. And yeah, obviously getting more and more lands to play is already a very impactful thing, especially when you're going to be gaining life and then getting value out of your commander. But perhaps the best of these ways to actually get value out of our commander is with Shattered Angel. It's a 3/3 flyer that has, whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may gain 3 life. Every single time an opponent gets a land into play, whether again that's a land for the turn, a fetch land that, they cracked and got something else, or, they ramped and got a land, we get value from this, and then again when our commander's in play, we get a ton of value from our commander. This can get really out of hand, especially if you're playing against decks that like to get a lot of lands out. And speaking of getting out of hand, let's now talk about cards like Lunarch Veteran, Impassioned Order, and Core Celebrant, which each can gain us a lot of life thanks to our creatures. Lunarch Veteran says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Impassioned Order says the exact same thing, and so does Core Celebrant, but it also counts when it comes into play as well. Again, the more and more of these effects that we have in play, the more instances of life gain we have, and the more of an impact they have for our commander. So yeah, at a certain point, just getting a single creature into play can generate us an absurd amount of value, getting a ton of counters on our commander, and helping us scry a lot as well. And of course, we're not done with life gain from creatures, so let's talk about Daxos Blessed by the Sun and Ashes of the Abhorrent. Daxos says, whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain 1 life. So yeah, now we can get value with our creatures coming into play or leaving play with this. Speaking of which, Ashes of the Abhorrent says, players can't cast spells from graveyards or activate abilities of cards in graveyard, so first up, that can shut down a good amount of graveyard synergistic strategies out there. Or things like Flashback or Escape or Jumpstart, this can just miscellaneously shut those down. On top of also gaining us life whenever a creature dies. So yeah, now every single time a creature dies, we gain 1 life. This counts everyone's creatures, not just our own, and again with our commander in play, that is a ton of value. But we also have some consistent, repeatable value with cards like Fountain of Renewal, Abiding Grace, and Sun Droplet. Fountain of Renewal says at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life, and by paying 3, we can sacrifice it to draw a card. So obviously just getting this down early can provide us a lot of value throughout the game, and yeah, if we happen to, scry and see something that is fantastic on the top of our library, might be worth sacrificing this to draw that. Next up, we've got Abiding Grace, which says, beginning of your end step, choose 1, you gain 1 life, return target creature card with mana value 1 from your graveyard to the battlefield. Obviously, always having that option to gain life can really help us out, and yeah, if we've got something in our graveyard like, Johnny Offshoot that we really want to get back, awesome, we get that for free. Next up, Sun Droplet can make a huge impact with this deck. It says whenever you're dealt damage, put that many charge counters on Sun Droplet. And at the beginning of each upkeep, you may remove a charge counter from Sun Droplet. If you do, you gain 1 life. So with this in play, we are just daring our opponents to actually try to take our life total down. Because when they hit us, well, we're going to be getting a lot of charge counters on this, and then on every single upkeep, essentially, we start to get to remove charge counters from this to gain life, and again, that's basically, hey, gaining life also equals +1/+1 counter and scry. So with 1 trip around the table, again, if we've got a charge counter on this for every player, that's going to be 4 counters and scry 4. And we're especially going to be daring our opponents to attack us when we've got Orm's Prayer in play. It's an older card, so I'm going to read its Oracle text. Whenever 1 or more creatures attack you, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature. So now, even if our opponents swing at us, we're going to be gaining value. And actually, Righteous Cause takes us a step further because it says whenever a creature attacks you, gain 1 life. So now creatures don't even have to attack us. They can attack anyone. We can attack an opponent, opponents can attack each other, and we are going to be gaining 1 life per each creature attacking. Obviously, this can make our commander massive in absolutely no time, and we can dig through our deck with that scry. But now some final repeatable life gain effects that I want to highlight are Tablet of the Guilds, Sunscorched Regent, and Scavenging Ooze. Tablet of the Guild says, as it comes into play, choose 2 colors. Whenever you cast a spell, if it's at least one of the chosen colors, you gain 1 life for each of the chosen colors it is. So, obviously, when this comes into play, we choose green and white. And now whenever we cast any of our green or white spells, we gain life, which again is just Value Town. And speaking of Value Town, well, Sunscorched Regent has something to say about that. A 4/3 dragon with flying that says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a +1 counter on Sunscorched Regent and you gain 1 life. This thing can get absolutely massive in no time. In a multiplayer game with 3 opponents like Commander, well, this can just keep getting trigger after trigger after trigger, getting huge and gaining us a ton of life to make our Commander huge and also help us scry a ton. And speaking of large creatures, well, there's Scavenging Ooze, a 2/2 ooze that costs 1 and a green that says, pay a green, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a +1 counter on Scavenging Ooze and you gain 1 life. This is fantastic graveyard hate just on its own. It is fantastic at that. And yeah, it can take advantage of any creatures in anyone's graveyards to actually just grow itself, and then again also grow our commander when we gain that life and help us scry. But of course, outside of our card selection with our scry, we also have some card advantage spells with some things that can draw us a massive amount of cards with Hunter's Insight, Soul's Majesty, and Garruk Primal Hunter. Hunter's Insight says, choose our creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combo damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. By getting our commander through and hitting opponent for a ton, this can draw us an absurd amount of cards. And then with Soul's Majesty, we actually don't even have to get through with our commander. It says, draw cards equal to the power of target creature you control. And then Garruk Primal Hunter is very similar to this. His -3 is draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. And if we really want a +1, we can make a 3/3 beast. And if we want a -6, we can make a 6/6 worm creature token for each land we control. But for the most part, yeah, we're probably just going to play this and then have it go bye-bye and draw us a ton of cards. And speaking of going bye-bye, well, Momentous Fall can be a great card in this deck. It says, as there's a cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, you draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, then you gain life equal to its toughness. So this can be a great backup plan. If someone is going to deal with our commander and it's going to leave play anyways, well, let's just take advantage of how massive our commander is and draw a ton of cards and gain a ton of life. Or, you know, also consider some of the other ways that I'll talk about here in a bit to get more and more counters on other things, or, you know, a card like Sunscorched Regent, or, you know, the Ooze that can just grow throughout the game and just utilize them for card draw. But we can also use our entire army for card draw with something like Shamanic Revelation, which says, draw a card for each creature you control, and it's got Ferocious, you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. And then Harmonize is just a solid draw spell in these colors. It's just a sorcery for 2 green, that says, draw 3 cards, so yeah, that'll do the trick. Next up, we've got some repeatable effects that can help us draw cards with Gate to the Afterlife, Cosmos Elixir, and Sigarda's Splendor. Gate to the Afterlife says, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you gain 1 life, then you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So now when our non-token creatures die, first up we gain a life, and again with our commander that's a counter, and we also scry, so that's again fantastic card selection. Then we also get to draw a card and discard a card. So this is card selection upon card selection, which is kind of card advantage at a certain point when we can ditch dead cards in our hand. Next up, Cosmos Elixir says, at the beginning of your end step, draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting life total, otherwise you gain 2 life. With the amount of life that we can gain with this deck, yeah, we can keep our life total above 40 pretty easily most of the time. And if we are below 40, well, this still gains us some life to actually, you know, help us scry and get our commander larger. Next up, Sigarda's Splendor says, when it enters the battlefield, note your life total. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if your life total is greater than or equal to the last noted life total for Sigarda's Splendor, then note your life total. Again, by gaining a ton of life during our turn or during our opponent's turns, we can ensure that we hit this. On top of that, it has whenever you cast a white spell, you gain 1 life. So again, on top of that, that's just some nice incremental life gain. Now when it comes to removal, let's talk about cards like Return to Nature, Oblation, and Beast Within. Return to Nature says choose 1 destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. This is a very flexible card that can help us out in a lot of situations. Speaking of which, Oblation is very flexible as well. The owner of target non-land permanent shovels into their library, then draws 2 cards. So this can deal with pretty much anything, again, non-land, and also keep in mind, if we really need to draw some cards, well, we can actually shuffle one of our own permanents into our library as well. And then Beast Within says, destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. Being able to destroy any permanent in exchange for a 3/3 is a deal that I will make any day of the week. And again, keep in mind, if we really need to get a 3/3 into play under our control, we can destroy one of our own things as well. Next up, we're also going to be running Crush Contraband and Night of Autumn. Crush Contraband says choose 1 or both exile target artifact or exile target enchantment. And then Knight of Autumn says when it enters the battlefield, choose one, put 2/1 counters on Knight of Autumn, or destroy target artifact or enchantment, or you gain 4 life. So this has a lot of flexibility. Again, we can either make this a larger creature when it comes into play, we can take out an artifact or enchantment, or again, if we need that additional value out of that life gain, we gain some life, and again, if our commander's in play, we get that counter and scry. Of course, though, we're also going to be running some board wipes in this deck with cards like Cleansing Nova and Akroma's Vengeance. Cleansing Nova says choose one, destroy all creatures, or destroy all artifacts and enchantments. So yeah, depending on the scenario that we're in, either of these can be very helpful. And then if we just need to get rid of, well, basically everything, there's Akroma's Vengeance, which says destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, or we can cycle it for 3. So if things are going well, maybe cycle it away. If things aren't going so well, destroy everything. Next up, we've got some things that can destroy, well, almost everything with cards like Divine Reckoning, Tragic Arrogance, and Slash the Ranks. Divine Reckoning says each player chooses a creature they control, destroy the rest, and we can also flash this back. Chances are pretty likely we're going to have the most massive creature on the board, so yeah, let's take everyone down to just one creature and then have some fun from there. Next up, Tragic Arrogance says for each player you choose from among the permanents that player controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker, then each player sacrifices all other non-land permanents they control. This card is fantastic and brutal, and yeah, we can do some pretty fun things with those selections. And then Slash the Rank says for all creatures and planeswalkers except for commanders. So this can wipe the board clean of all creatures except for commanders, and yeah, if our opponent doesn't have any commanders in play, too bad for them. Moving on, we've also got ways to protect our team with cards like Loxodon Hierarch, Unbreakable Formation, and Tamiyo Safekeeping. Loxodon Hierarch has, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life, so again, just nice additional life gain right there to help us with our commander's trigger, and of course on top of that, by paying green-white, we can sacrifice it and regenerate each creature we control. So this can just be great board wipe protection, on top of just being some nice additional value with that life gain. And then Unbreakable Formation is an instant that says creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn, but if we cast it during our main phase, we get a counter on each of our creatures, and they gain vigilance until end of turn. So if we need to save our team from a board wipe, cool, we'll do that. If we don't, well, maybe we want to swing out with them. And then Tamiyo Safekeeping is a fantastic protection spell. It says target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, you gain 2 life. So this can protect our commander from the vast majority of things out there. You know, on top of just gaining us some life as a nice added bonus. And speaking of added bonuses, well, let's talk about some equipment with things like Zephyr Boots, Loxodon Warhammer, and Behemoth Sledge. Zephyr Boots is going to give our commander flying, and yeah, getting our commander through on an opponent can be absolutely deadly. I mean, I'm talking about a 1 or 2 shot KO. On top of that, though, whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card, then discard a card. So yeah, just some nice extra value there. And then Loxodon Warhammer is going to give equipped creature +3/+0 and trample and lifelink. So this can help our commander hit for even more and push damage through and gain us a ton of life in the process. Speaking of which, in a very similar way, there's Behemoth Sledge, which says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has trample and lifelink. So basically the exact same thing, but with slightly different stats. But out of every single card in this deck, in my opinion, there is one that stands above the rest, and that is the Golden Pig of this deck. And the Golden Pig, the #1 card out of our 99, is Cleric class. It's an enchantment class for a white that says if you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. On top of that, by getting it to level 2 by paying 3 and a white, it says whenever you gain life, put a +1 counter on target creature you control. And at level 3, by paying 4 and a white, it says when this class becomes level 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, you gain life equal to its toughness. So first up, this is incredibly easy to get into play, and just with it being in play without leveling it up at all, it's going to gain us a ton of life throughout the game, again with all those instances of life gain that we have. On top of that, by paying 3 and a white and getting it to level 2, this is basically just like, hey, another instance of your commander's trigger. Now, okay, maybe without the scry, but still, it can make creatures absolutely massive. Now, obviously, we can get more and more counters on our commander if we want to make it into, you know, basically probably a 1-shot KO very easily with commander damage, or if we want to spread those counters around, we can. And of course, that level 3 is just nice to have, being able to reanimate a creature and gain some life. That's just some extra nice value. But yeah, overall, this can gain us a ton of extra life throughout the game, can make our creature into a 1-shot KO very easily, and yeah, can also make our other creatures massive too. So, for all those reasons, this is the Golden Pig. But of course, we also have some other fantastic cards in this deck that can help us dish out a ton of damage to our opponents with things like Trudge Garden, Griffin Airy, and Angelic Accord. Trudge Garden says, whenever you gain life, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 4/4 green fungus beast creature token with trample. With all the instances of life gain that we have, this can make us a massive army in no time. And of course, keep in mind that this works very well with any of those impassioned order kind of creatures that say whenever another creature comes into play, you gain 1 life. Because we just simply gain a life with something else, and then we say, okay, I'll pay 2, I'll make a 4/4. Look, I gained a life. Okay, I'll pay 2, I'll make a 4/4. Look, I gained a life. Yeah, this can get out of hand pretty quickly. Next up, Griffinary says, at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 2/2 white Griffin creature token with flying. Yeah, 3 life for this deck is no big deal. And then Angelic Accord takes this a step further. It says at the beginning of each end step, if you gain 4 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. So this counts any end step, not just our own. And again, though it is 4 life, we can easily get to that. And yeah, a 4/4 flying, that sounds pretty deadly. And speaking of deadly, there's Blossoming Bog Beast, a 3/3 beast that says whenever it attacks you, gain 2 life, then creatures you control gain trample, get +X/+X until I determine X the amount of life you gain this turn. This can make our entire army absolutely massive in no time, and yeah, can very easily make our commander into a one-shot KO. And, you know, it also just gains us 2 life just on its own, so yeah, that's automatically a +2/+2, but it's going to be a lot more than that when we swing. Next up, Nykthos Paragon is a 4/6 human soldier that says whenever you gain life, you may put that many +1 counters on each creature you control. Do this only once each turn. Now, keep in mind the way that this is worded. You don't have to actually use this, say that, you know, you just happen to gain 1 life here or there. You might want to wait later in the turn. Maybe you know you're going to gain more life again. Maybe you've got that Blossoming Bog Beast where you swing and you gain 2 life. So sure, do the counters then. But yeah, also keep in mind this counts every single player's turn, not just your own. Speaking of which, there's Lathiel the Bounteous Dawn, which says, at the beginning of each end step, if you gain life this turn, distribute up to that many +1 counters among any number of other target creatures. So yeah, this can get pretty out of hand, distributing a ton of counters. Again, you can make your commander massive, you can make the entire army massive, whatever you want to do. But now that I've gone through every single non-land card in this deck, let's talk about the price. Again, as I mentioned earlier, every single card in this deck is less than $1, so our estimated cost for this deck is just $33.89. Also, do keep in mind that that estimated cost does include the basic lands at 10 cents a piece, so if you've already got those basics, there's some extra savings there for you. And speaking of potential extra savings, you might be able to save even more if you buy this deck on TCG Player and utilize heavily played and damaged cards, which of course need a home too. Though, do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again, and have a good one.